The auction house fell silent. I stood on the raised platform in nothing but torn cotton pants that barely clung to my hips, arms bound behind my back, bruises darkening my ribs where the slavers had kicked me for resisting. Cold autumn air bit at my bare skin, and I refused to look at the crowd, refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing fear in my eyes. "Starting bid $50, the auctioneer shouted, his voice echoing off the wooden rafters. "Strong back, good teeth can work a full day in the fields." Silence, no hands raised, no voices called out. I wasn't surprised. I'd been trouble since the moment they'd captured me 3 weeks ago, fought every step of the way, refused to break, refused to bow. The slavers had beaten me for it, starved me, left me half naked to shame me into submission. It hadn't worked. $40, the auctioneer's voice grew desperate. "Come now, gentlemen, he's young, I'll take him." The voice came from the back of the room, deep, calm, and utterly certain. The crowd parted and I finally looked up. A man stood there, tall and broad-shouldered, with weathered tan skin and steel-gray eyes that seemed to see straight through me. He wore a black Stetson, a worn leather vest over a dark shirt, and boots that had seen 1,000 miles of hard riding. There was something different about him, something that made the other men in the room shift uncomfortably and avoid his gaze. $40, the auctioneer asked hopefully. I said, "I'll take him, here's 100. The man stepped forward and dropped a leather pouch on the auction table. "Now get those ropes off him before I decide you're not worth doing business with." The auctioneer scrambled to comply, and within moments, rough hands were cutting the bindings from my wrists. I stumbled, my legs weak from standing for hours, but the stranger caught my arm, his grip steady and surprisingly gentle. "Easy," he said quietly, "you're safe now." I wanted to laugh at that. Safe, I'd never been safe a day in my life, but something in his eyes made me hold my tongue. He shrugged off his leather vest and wrapped it around my shoulders, covering my exposed torso. It was warm from his body heat and smelled of leather, wood smoke, and something else, something clean and honest that I couldn't name. "Can you walk?" he asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Good, let's get you out of here." My name is Jesse Cole, and this is the story of how I went from a piece of property on an auction block to finding the only home I'd ever known, and the only man I'd ever love. The stranger led me out of the auction house into the bright Texas sunlight. My eyes watered after the darkness inside, and I had to squint to see the dusty main street of whatever godforsaken town this was. A beautiful black stallion waited at the hitching post, and the man, my new owner, I reminded myself bitterly, untied the reins with practiced ease. "What's your name?" he asked, not looking at me. I hesitated. Giving him my name felt like giving him power, but what choice did I have? Jesse Cole. "Jesse," he said it like he was testing how it felt on his tongue. "I'm Dalton Cross. I own a ranch about 20 miles north of here, the Cross Creek Ranch. You'll be working for me now, but Jesse, you need to understand something right from the start." He turned to face me fully, and the intensity in his gray eyes made my breath catch. "I don't own people. I bought you because leaving you there wasn't an option. But as far as I'm concerned, you're a free man working for wages. You want to leave once we get to the ranch? I'll give you supplies and a horse and you can ride out. No questions asked, understood." I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. You're letting me go." "I'm giving you a choice, that's different." He swung up into the saddle with fluid grace, then extended his hand down to me. "But I'm hopping you'll stay. I could use a good hand, and something tells me you've got more fight in you than a dozen ordinary men." For a long moment I just looked at his outstretched hand, calloused, strong, offering something I'd never had before. "Freedom." I took it, and he pulled me up behind him in one smooth motion. I had to wrap my arms around his waist to keep from falling, and I felt his body tense slightly at the contact before he relaxed. "Hold on tight," he said, "it's a long ride." We rode out of town at a steady pace, and with every mile that passed, I felt something inside me start to uncoil, some tight, terrified thing that had been wound around my chest for as long as I could remember. Cross Creek Ranch appeared on the horizon as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. It was beautiful in a stark, honest way, a large ranch house built from dark wood and stone, a massive barn, several outbuildings, and corrals that held some of the finest horses I'd ever seen. "It's not much," Dalton said as we rode through the main gate, "but it's home." It's more than I've ever had, I said quietly. He glanced back at me over his shoulder and something in his expression softened. Then I hope you'll stay and make it yours too. We dismounted in front of the barn and a young man came running out, maybe 17, with Dalton's same gray eyes and easy smile. "You're back," I was starting to worry. He stopped short when he saw me, his eyes widening at my bruised, half-naked state. "Jesus, Dalton, what happened?" "Jesse, this is my younger brother, Tommy. Tommy, this is Jesse Cole. He'll be staying with us." Dalton's tone brooked no argument. "Get him settled in the bunkhouse, find him some clean clothes, and make sure he gets a hot meal. I need to tend to midnight." Tommy nodded eagerly. "Come on, Jesse, let's get you fixed up." I followed Tommy across the yard, acutely aware of Dalton's eyes on my back the whole way. The bunkhouse was simple but clean: 4 beds, a wood stove, shelves for personal belongings, and windows that let in the dying light. Tommy rummaged through a trunk and pulled out clothes. "These should fit, they're old ones of Dalton's." He handed me a soft cotton shirt, denim pants, and even socks and boots. "Bathroom's out back if you want to wash up, there's hot water from the pump." "Thank you," I managed. Tommy's expression turned serious. "Dalton's a good man, Jesse, best I've ever known. Whatever you've been through, whatever brought you to that auction house, you're safe here, I promise you that." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. After Tommy left, I stripped off the torn pants and Dalton's vest, then made my way to the outdoor bathroom. The hot water was a luxury I'd almost forgotten existed, and I stood under the stream, watching dirt and blood swirl down the drain, trying to wash away the memory of rough hands and cruel words. When I finally emerged, clean and dressed in Dalton's clothes, I felt almost human again. Dinner was served in the main house, a large, comfortable space that felt lived in and loved. Tommy had prepared a simple meal of roast beef, potatoes, and fresh bread, and I ate ravenously while Dalton watched with quiet satisfaction. "When did you last have a proper meal?" he asked. 3 weeks ago, before they caught me." "Caught you?" Tommy leaned forward. "Were you running away from somewhere?" "Tommy," Dalton said quietly, "that's Jesse's business." But I found myself wanting to answer. Maybe it was the food or the warmth of the fire or the way Dalton looked at me like I was a person, not property. I was born into servitude on a plantation in Louisiana, worked there my whole life. When the owner died last month, his son decided to sell off the workers for cash. I ran, didn't get far. The room fell silent. "You ran toward freedom," Dalton said finally. "That takes courage." "Didn't do me much good." "You're here now, aren't you? That counts for something." He stood and began clearing plates. "Get some rest tonight, Jesse. Tomorrow I'll show you around the ranch and we'll figure out what work suits you best. But remember what I said, you're free to leave anytime." I watched him move around the kitchen with easy domesticity and something in my chest tightened. "Why did you buy me, Mr. Cross?" He paused, his back to me. "Because I know what it's like to be looked at like you're less than human, to be judged for something you can't change, and I couldn't walk away from that." "What do you mean?" Dalton turned to face me and there was something raw in his expression. "I mean that in a town like this, a man like me who has no interest in women, who never married, who lives alone with his brother, is already suspect. People talk, they whisper, they look at me like I'm something wrong, something broken." He held my gaze. "So when I saw you on that platform being treated like you were worthless, I saw myself, and I couldn't leave you there." The confession hung between us, heavy and honest. Tommy had gone very quiet, his eyes moving between his brother and me. "Thank you," I said, my voice rough, "for seeing me for this." Dalton nodded once, then turned back to the dishes. "Get some rest, Jesse, tomorrow's a new day." I couldn't sleep. I lay in the bunkhouse bed, the first real bed I'd had in weeks, and stared at the ceiling, my mind spinning. Dalton Cross had bought my freedom and then given it back to me, had looked at me with something other than contempt or lust, had treated me like I mattered. I didn't know what to do with that. Around midnight, I gave up on sleep and walked outside. The ranch was beautiful under the stars, peaceful in a way I'd never experienced. I wandered toward the barn, drawn by the soft sounds of horses. Inside, I found Dalton. He was tending to his stallion, Midnight, brushing the horse's glossy coat with long, practiced strokes. He looked up when I entered, unsurprised. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "Too quiet, I'm not used to it." He smiled faintly. You'll get used to it, might even come to love it. I moved closer, watching him work. There was something mesmerizing about his movements, confident, gentle, completely focused. Can I ask you something? Anything. When you said you know what it's like to be judged for something you can't change, did you mean? I hesitated, not sure how to phrase it. Did I mean that I prefer men? Dalton didn't look up from his work. Yes, that's exactly what I meant. My heart stuttered, and you just told me that just like that. Why wouldn't I? You asked. And besides, Jesse, I figure we're both carrying secrets that could get us killed in the wrong company. Might as well be honest with each other. I stepped closer, my hands shaking slightly. I've never met anyone who just said it out loud before. Have you ever wanted to? The question was gentle, but it hit me like a physical blow. I thought about all the years of hiding, of pretending, of watching other men and feeling things I wasn't supposed to feel. Yes, I whispered. God, yes. Dalton finally looked at me, and the understanding in his eyes nearly undid me. Then say it, Jesse. There's no one here but us and the horses. Say it out loud. My throat closed up. I've never. I know, take your time. I took a shaky breath and then another. And then, for the first time in my entire life, I said the words I'd been too terrified to even think. I like men, I've always liked men, and I've spent my whole life pretending I didn't. The relief that flooded through me was so intense I actually swayed on my feet. Dalton was there instantly, his hand steadying my arm. Easy, breathe. I laughed and it came out half sob. I said it, I actually said it. You did. His hand was still on my arm, warm and grounding. And the sky didn't fall. You're still standing. You're still you. I looked up at him and suddenly we were very close, close enough that I could see the silver threading through his dark hair, the lines around his eyes, the way his lips parted slightly as he looked at me. Dalton, I breathed. Jesse, his voice was rough. I need you to know something. I bought you to set you free, not to. I didn't bring you here expecting anything from you. You understand that, right? I know. And if you want to stay, you'll have your own space, your own wages, your own life. I won't. I kissed him. I don't know where I found the courage. Maybe it was his honesty, or the way he'd looked at me like I mattered, or the simple fact that for the first time in my life I felt safe enough to take what I wanted. His lips were warm and slightly chapped, and for one terrifying moment he went completely still. Then his hand came up to cup the back of my head and he kissed me back, slow and deep and devastatingly gentle. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Jesse, he said, his voice wrecked, we need to be careful if anyone found out. I know the risks. I looked at him steadily. But I've spent my whole life being careful, being scared, hiding who I am, and I'm so tired, Dalton, I'm so tired of being afraid. He rested his forehead against mine, his thumb tracing gentle circles on the nape of my neck. Then we'll figure it out together. Whatever this is, whatever it becomes, we'll face it together. Promise. I promise. We stood there in the barn holding each other, and I felt something I'd never felt before, hope. 6 months later. The ranch had become home. I worked alongside Dalton and Tommy from sunup to sundown, mending fences, training horses, managing the cattle. The work was hard, but it was honest and I was good at it. More than that, I loved it. But what I loved most were the stolen moments with Dalton. A brush of hands when we passed each other tools, the way his eyes found mine across the dinner table, late nights in the barn when Tommy was asleep. When we could kiss and touch and be ourselves without fear. We were careful, so careful, to the outside world I was just a ranch hand Dalton had hired. No one questioned it, no one suspected. Except maybe Tommy. He cornered me one afternoon while we were mucking out stalls. Jesse, can I ask you something? Sure. Are you and Dalton, is there something? He trailed off, his face reddening. My heart stopped. Tommy. It's okay, he said quickly. I don't care, I do care, but not in a bad way. Dalton's been different since you came, happier, more alive, and the way he looks at you. He smiled. I'm not stupid, Jesse, and I'm not going to say anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm okay with it, more than okay. Relief flooded through me so intensely I had to lean against the stall wall. Thank you, that means more than you know. He deserves to be happy, you both do. Tommy clapped me on the shoulder. Just be careful, okay? Not everyone in this town is as understanding as I am. The trouble came on a Saturday night. Dalton and I had ridden into town for supplies and we'd stopped at the saloon for a drink before heading back. It was crowded loud and we were careful to maintain distance, just two ranchers unwinding after a long week. But I couldn't stop watching him, couldn't stop noticing the way the lamplight caught in his hair, the way his hands wrapped around his whiskey glass, the curve of his mouth when he smiled. And someone else noticed too. Well, well, a familiar voice drawled. I turned to see the auctioneer from 6 months ago, the same man who tried to sell me on that platform. He was drunk, swaying on his feet, his eyes bloodshot. If it ain't Cross and his pretty little purchase. Tell me, Cross, you getting your money's worth out of that one? The saloon went quiet. Dalton's expression went cold. Walk away, Henderson. Oh, I don't think so. See, I've been hearing stories about how you and your boy here spend an awful lot of time together, how you look at him, how he lives on your ranch like he's something more than just a hired hand. Henderson leaned in, his breath reeking of alcohol. Makes a man wonder what exactly you bought him for. I felt the blood drain from my face. Dalton stood slowly, his body coiled with controlled violence. You've got 3 seconds to apologize and walk away, Henderson. After that, I'm not responsible for what happens. Or what? You'll hit me, prove everyone right about what you are. That was when I moved. I stepped between them, facing Henderson with my hands raised. This has nothing to do with Mr. Cross. You're drunk and you're making a fool of yourself. Go home. Henderson's eyes narrowed. Look at that. The property's got a mouth on him. Maybe I should report this to the marshal. Pretty sure there's laws against what you two are doing. There's also laws against slander, a new voice said. I turned to see Judge Morrison, a respected figure in town, standing behind us. He looked at Henderson with cold disdain. And I've heard quite enough of it tonight. Dalton Cross is one of the most upstanding citizens in this county. He pays his taxes, runs an honest business, and treats his workers fairly. What he does on his own property is his business, not yours or mine. He turned to the crowd. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. Otherwise, I suggest you all mind your own affairs. The tension in the room shifted. Henderson glared at all of us, then stumbled toward the door. This isn't over, Cross. After he left, Judge Morrison put a hand on Dalton's shoulder. Be careful, son. Times are changing, but they're not changing fast enough, you understand? Dalton nodded, his jaw tight. I understand, thank you, Judge. We left the saloon quickly, and the ride home was silent and tense. That night, Dalton came to the bunkhouse. He stood in the doorway, silhouetted by moonlight, and I knew immediately that something was wrong. We need to talk, he said quietly. I sat up, my chest tight. Okay. He closed the door behind him and sat on the edge of my bed. For a long moment he just looked at me, his expression agonized. I'm putting you in danger, he said finally, by keeping you here, by caring about you the way I do. Henderson's not going to let this go, and if he convinces enough people, if he gets the marshal involved. Then we'll face it, I interrupted. Together, isn't that what you promised? Jesse, you don't understand. They could arrest us, they could. His voice broke. I can't lose you, not now, not after finally finding someone who understands me. I took his face in my hands, forcing him to look at me. Then don't push me away, don't make that decision for me, Dalton. I'm choosing this, I'm choosing you. Whatever consequences come, we face them together. What if I asked you to leave, to take money and a horse and ride somewhere safe, somewhere you could start over without this hanging over your head? I'd say no, because I've already found home. It's here, with you. Tears spilled down his cheeks and I kissed them away, gentle, reverent kisses that tasted of salt and desperation. I love you, he whispered. God help me, I love you, Jesse Cole. My heart stopped, then started again, beating so hard I thought it might burst. I love you too, have since the moment you wrapped your vest around me and told me I was free. He kissed me then, deep and claiming and full of everything we couldn't say out loud, and when we finally broke apart, we were both shaking. Whatever happens, I said, we face it together, promise me. I promise. 2 years later. The ranch had grown. Dalton had expanded our operations, bought more land, hired more hands, good men who knew to mind their own business and who'd proven themselves trustworthy over time. Tommy had gotten married and moved into his own house on the property, happy and settled with a woman who loved him fiercely. And Dalton and I had built something beautiful. We couldn't be open about it, the world wasn't ready for that, might never be ready for that, but within the boundaries of Cross Creek Ranch we were ourselves. We shared a bedroom in the main house. We worked side by side every day. We built a life together, piece by careful piece. Henderson had tried to cause trouble a few more times, but Judge Morrison had shut him down each time. Eventually, he'd moved on to another town, another target for his bitterness. And slowly, so slowly, the whispers died down. On a warm spring evening, Dalton and I sat on the porch watching the sun set over our land. His hand rested on my thigh and I covered it with my own, marveling at how natural it felt. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked quietly, "buying me that day all the trouble it brought?" Dalton turned to look at me and his smile was soft, genuine. "Not for a single second. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Jesse Cole. Even though we have to hide." "We're not hiding, not really, we're protecting what we have, there's a difference." He squeezed my hand. "And someday, maybe not in our lifetime, but someday men like us won't have to be so careful, won't have to pretend, they'll be able to love openly and build lives together without fear." "You think so?" "I have to believe it, because what's the alternative? Living in shame, denying what we feel." He shook his head. "I'd rather spend one honest day with you than 1,000 lies with anyone else." I leaned over and kissed him, slow and sweet, tasting the future on his lips. When we broke apart, the stars were coming out, scattered across the darkening sky like promises. "Come on," Dalton said, standing and pulling me to my feet. "Let's go to bed. Tomorrow we've got a full day's work ahead of us." "Every day's a full day's work on a ranch." "True, but every day's a day I get to spend with you. That makes it all worthwhile." We walked inside together, hand in hand, and I thought about that auction platform, about standing there bruised and broken and certain I had no future. And now look at me. I had a home, a family, work that mattered, and a man who loved me with everything he had. I was the richest man alive.